All right, you baskets of love. How's everybody doing? It's Venia here from the Spiritual Party Lounge, right? We're party animals, aren't we? Spiritual ones. Yeah. Today is November the 1st. Yesterday was my most dreaded day of the year. It was Halloween. I loathe Halloween. And let me tell you why. I probably am the only person on earth who was born. I cannot stand sweets. I hate sweets. And as I got older, I found out the damage that like sugar and sugary stuff can really do. And so it was like, wow, this is such a good thing. And I can't stand to see kids addicted to sweets and my grandkids. I just pray about them every night. Not working, but anyway, my husband loves Halloween. Of course, I told you we were opposites in every way, right? Except we both don't like coffee, so that's probably the only thing that keeps us together. But anyway, he loves Halloween. My holiday is Christmas. But anyway, I can't stand giving out sweets to children. I'd rather give them like dollar bills or something, right? But no, he's got to give out candy. And so I sit there with him like every year, and each year the children coming to our door has gotten less and less. So I do like pray that, like, oh, please, kids, just come. And he's even going so far as to spot him out on the street and say, hey, come over here. I know they think he's like a psychopath, but anyway, they do come. But last night he did get a few, and I was happy. He got quite a few, enough to satisfy him to the point where he was like, oh, God, I don't want to give away any more candy. But, he knew that it was like, I'd rather seriously like watch paint dry. But anyway, at the end of the night, this is what he sent me, and then I felt kind of bad. He says, I really appreciate that you've been down here with me for 3 to 4 hours. I know you don't like it, but thank you. And then he puts this little heart thing. Then I felt all bad. But I still don't like it. I don't. I can't. I just can't stand giving out sweets to kids. I just, I know, and I know all you guys are going to chime in and say, but it's only once a year, and I got all that. Please, just don't. But it's me and sweets. I'm not a sweets person at all. I have maybe one sweet donut. It's a chocolate covered glazed donut. I have a craving for it once a year from Dunkin' Donuts. That's it. That's all the sweets I can do for the whole year. But anyway, all right. Enough of that. Enough of me being the bad guy. Anyway, but I do love the costumes. I really do. And I do praise the kids on like their costumes. I'm like, oh my God, you look great. I make a big deal of them. I'm not a total like jerk. But anyway, all right. So I told you guys before Mercury is in. By the way, we've got so many snapbacks. I may not even be able to cover them all today because I do want to talk about uh, depression today that affects all of us. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not. What I'm going to talk about today you're going to see how it just affects all of us. Okay, so um, I want to really get into that to some length. But there's just so much to cover. But I told you guys that we are in the shadow phase of Mercury retrograde. So, in other words, Mercury basically will go into retrograde on November the 9th to be exact. However, it starts its stopping motion in the sky and starts its little shenanigans. And Mercury is the planet of shenanigans. It rules Gemini and Virgo, but it rules Gemini. And I saying that should be enough. Gemini has more shenanigans for everyone, and I love you guys. Geminis, you guys are fun, lighthearted. Um, everywhere all at once. But you guys got your shenanigans going on, okay? And so Mercury will be in retrograde in Scorpio and Sagittarius. I covered that 2 videos back prior. However, it started, like I said, the shadow phase, and we're going to see some things start to slow down. It's going to do its little tricks, losing things breaking down, whether it be cars, travel plans kind of effed up. Although, to be honest with you, it's sort of okay if you kind of travel during the shadow phase before it actually goes direct. Just as long as you've made those plans before the shadow phase, and as well as traveling while it is retrograde. If you've made the plans before that and checked everything and arrive early, and that should be sort of okay, but delays can still come up. But anyway, shadow phase has already been started. I lost my car keys the other day. Okay, totally lost them. And the problem was, although I do have a duplicate set, we have a club on the car, and we only have one club key. Okay, so we were unable to drive the car. And so I did what I typically always do when I lose something. I go into a mindset that I was taught by the spirit world, and where they showed me clearly nothing is lost in the spiritual world. Okay? Nothing. Everything is seen, everything is known. Okay? And that applies to us here. Okay? Nothing can be lost in the spiritual world. And so once I grasped that, held on to it, and I released it, right? Once I did that, I would say within about an hour and a half max, I just got a flash of exactly where the keys were. Very unexpected place. They were in the jacket pocket of a jacket I rarely wear. I just happened to wear this jacket, but I completely forgot about it because I rarely wear the jacket. And we didn't even know that I had lost the car keys the first or second day because we didn't try to drive that car. But anyway, flash came. I immediately went to the jacket pocket, and boom, there they were. Okay? I told you guys about that wonderful, you can say trick, but it's actually, it's a universal truth. Okay? It's literally a universal truth. Nothing is lost in the eyes of spirit. Nothing. So that's something good to carry with you and to know whenever you lose something or misplace something. Just know that there is no misplacing in spirit. Everything is seen, everything is known, everything is viewed, and release that. To just completely release it. And you will either find it, or it will appear to you, or it will show up some kind of way. Okay, so wanted to share that. I want to say also that on the 9th, when Mercury goes retrograde, it will retrograde first. Mercury will be in Sagittarius, okay? And Sagittarius is, amongst other things, higher learning, okay? And realms into the realms beyond this realm, right? And so Don't be surprised if you have weird dreams, okay? Synchronicities that are just OMG, like, no way, that's just too perfect, right? Um, Strange messages, either from others or from dreams, okay, that are have a realistic base, okay, um, and they could either come through, your helpers on the other side, or your loved ones from the other side. Okay? A Mercury in Sagittarius crystallizes things for us. Okay? Crystallizes them to the point where we see clearly. One thing about Sagittarius, as you know, if you know any Sagittariuses, my husband is one. Ooh, my best friend is a Sagittarius. They are blunt. They're truth tellers. Okay? Mercury in Sagittarius will put the truth out there for you. Okay? And in a way that you crystallize it and it becomes a part of your understanding. Okay? And it's a very nice aspect. It's one of those type of aspects that doesn't come often in this way, okay, because Mercury being retrograde, so it really digs in deep. But it's like one of those epiphany moments, okay, that we have, but times 10. All right, so you've got that coming up. And that is like a door, a universal door opening for a better understanding, um, better grasping of situations, people, etc. Okay? So kind of put that in your calendar. And even if you don't, you'll know it when it happens. Okay? I'll try to revisit that closer we get. But don't be surprised if you start to see that type of thing coming soon. Okay? Now, as you all know, I told you guys about the 30th to the 4th and past, right? A lot of turbulence. I sense this has nothing to do with necessarily astrology. I don't know what kind of aspects coincide with that. So I'm not going to even speak on that. But I did see a lot of turbulence, some things coming up, um, from the 30th on, and especially around like the 4th. Okay. By the way, I happened to mention that there was 30 and a 4, 304. And as you guys know, I've given out numbers before they've hit. Well, so two people told me they actually hit 304 on the exact same day that that video came out. Okay, so congrats to them. And the beautiful thing is my guides don't really mind that kind of stuff. They don't. Unlike some people thinking it's a sin, it's not. They don't view stuff like that as sinful, or it's just another way that abundance can come through and come in. Okay? Um, we put so many of our human little, uh, limitations and, taboos on stuff, and it's just not a part of the spiritual world, you know. Um, I've told you guys before, gambling is just another way that abundance can come through if it needs to come through for you. Okay, stock market. People say, "Oh God, gambling's bad," but they've got their money invested in the stock market. The stock market is pure gambling. Pure gambling. No matter how you look at it. I know that there's a church that, and I won't even mention who they are, but 96% of their money is through the stock market, and yet they forbid gambling. You gotta be kidding me. Like, really? Stop. There's probably more gambling through the stock market than there is actually sitting down at a casino or playing cards gambling. But anyway, so we've got to release some of those taboos, some of those crazy, you know, ideas we have about what spirit thinks is good or bad. Spirit has very few uh, taboos like that. Okay. Like I said, it's just another way that abundance can come through sometime. Okay. But anyway, all right. Um, Speaking of money, how about Billie Eilish giving the billionaires a little tongue lashing, right? Do we not love that? She gave away like 11.5 million. She's worth about 50 million, and she gave 11.5 million to charities, okay? And she was at a function, some award show, and there were a bunch of billionaires in the audience, including Mark Zuckerberg. And she basically said, look, why are there even billionaires? Like, why? Just give your money away. You don't need to be a billionaire. You know, have like hundreds of million, be happy. And in a sense, I agree with her. Like, I do. Like, once you get over a certain threshold, what do you need all that money for if you're not helping others? You guys know how I feel about that. I've talked about it. I don't I don't put the extra mid rolls in none of my videos ever. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to have to at some point because they sent me a thing that I'm not using the mid roll feature to monetize more. It's just not my. I don't sell memberships. I don't do this. And I'm not begrudging anyone that does that. But what I'm saying is, at some point, the greed is too much. It's just too much. And so anyway, she spoke about the billionaires right to their face. You know, help people. Like this, is basically what she's saying. Help people. Chris Brown actually did the same thing. He put out a Twitter, a TikTok, and I'm not sure about Instagram, but saying, look, you got all this money, like, great, do you, be happy, but damn, like, help people. What's the purpose in having all this money if you're not helping others? Hoarding it is what? You cannot take it with you. As a matter of fact, my entire time in the spiritual world, I was not even conscious during my NDE. I was not even conscious of money. The only time I became conscious of money was when I was shown by my guide, and all of you who read my first book, you know this story. But when I was shown the actual dollar amount of things that I had stolen when I was a teenager. And that was the only time I was sort of even aware of money. Otherwise, it literally meant nothing. It did not register. Okay, so it's wonderful to have. It certainly makes our lives easier while we're here. But at a certain point, when is enough enough, right? It's just, you know, greed. If people knew the greed, the total imbalance, they will have to experience the opposite end of that coin. They will. They will have to experience it. So, and that is, you know, sometimes when you see like these really super dirt poor countries that don't have a chance, you know, the people don't have a chance of getting ahead or moving ahead. a lot of those come into those type of lives, right? To experience the lack, that opposite end of super greed, where they're just happy for like a potato. Okay? That is sometimes where folks will come in and just to experience that type of life so that they can understand the other extreme. Okay? And it's it's sad for us, but in reality, it's something they need to do. That's a fact. That is not a just bad luck type of thing. That's a fact. They've chosen to experience that. They need to experience that type of extreme poverty because they went off a cliff in the totally opposite way. Like, don't be surprised if somebody like Elon comes back and it chooses to experience that type of life. Okay? He's aiming to be a trillionaire here. A trillionaire. Why? Literally, why? There's nothing wrong with having an abundance. Nothing at all. There's nothing wrong with having a lot. But the insatiable greed that comes along with it, it's just not healthy. It really isn't. Truly isn't. And I have truly gone off on several tangents today that I wasn't even planning, but flowing through. So, okay, let's try to get some of these snapbacks in real quick. And by the way, a judge ruled yesterday, okay, just yesterday, that SNAP benefits will be released. It was actually two judges, two different systems. They ordered that SNAP benefits will be released, so the government has to fund them through the weekend until Monday, when the Senate will do its thing, and however that mechanism works, okay? And if you guys recall, I made the prediction in, was it the last video or the one prior? I can't remember exactly, but that something would happen with Snap. And I wasn't sure how, but something would happen to restore it. Okay. There was the phone call. Marjorie Taylor Greene was on the phone call. It was leaked. And she basically gave Mike Johnson hell. Okay? She's not happy with him. She's not happy with her Republican colleagues. And she's going on every single podcast show that she can go on to just tell the truth about them. Okay? She'll be on The View, by the way, on Tuesday, Election Day. Okay? That should be a good one. I might even watch that. But, she's just spilling the truth. She's telling the truth. And remember, I told you guys way, way, way back, MAGA will turn on MAGA, the enemy of our enemy. It's happening, and it's building momentum more and more and more and more. Okay. The Senate defied, another snapback, here you go. The Senate defied Trump 3 times. They overturned and denied Trump's tariffs on Brazil, Canada, and 100 other countries. Okay? Now, just them taking this stance is kind of important. Um, Five senators, I believe, voted with Democrats. Um, Either five or three. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is even that is gaining momentum. Like they're starting to realize, okay, no, we actually control this. It does have to go to the House, and that too is going to open unexpectedly at some point here soon. And I've told you guys about that. Um, my prediction about Vance being super distracted and a messy situation. Oh boy, you guys all saw the photograph by now with Erica Kirk and JD Vance and the intimate hug they had. Yeah, that was kind of intimate. My husband is the only person I would ever hold like that and ever grasp like that. Ever. So, more to come on that. Another snapback Wilmington City Council, the lone Republican, he flipped his party registration to Democrat. He said the party has left him. He cannot relate to any tenets of this current Republican Party. Let's see. Oh, the Turning Point half show. uh, they were forced to cancel it. You know, who knew that Kid Rock and what's that other clown weren't going to be such a big draw after all? Like, really? Come on. Like, stop. Uh, oh, California Republicans were forced to give up, okay, on their campaign against Prop 50. Prop 50, as you know, is the redistricting effort put forth by Democrats and the governor, um, you know, to counter what Texas already did, right? Well, the Republicans at first they were, campaigning hard and going around and they just realized we can't afford it and people aren't like open to it, so they just dropped their efforts. Um, Marjorie Taylor Greene also forgot to mention she called for an overthrow of this government. If you type in MTG overthrow government in whatever platform you're using, you can hear her talk about it. How's that? Let's see. We did have an outage on the 29th, internet outage, and you know, this is very Mercury retrograde-ish. Happened during the shadow period. Uh, Xbox was out, Minecraft was out, Azure was out, and 365 services were out. There are going to be more of that type of thing, especially throughout this month. Especially throughout this month, okay? Let's see. Um, Prince Andrew was stripped of all his titles, okay, by the king. He's no longer royalty and he was forced out of his residence. So, those who told me before when I spoke about this, no, he still has his titles, he still has this. No, he doesn't. No more. He's done. He is no longer a royal, and he's got till I think the middle of November for him to vacate uh, his residence. Okay? Let's see. Okay. And so far during this rough period, this the 30th through the 4th, like I told you, and beyond, We're going to also see superstorms. And we've seen them Florida, Cuba, New York, underwater. Uh, we saw Trump threatening nukes, nuclear testing. We haven't done that in 30 years. Um, and I just want to say also that I'm so pleased. I know that Jamaica, their structure, like I told you, was going to be kind of decimated, but I didn't see a catastrophic loss of life, and that has turned out to be true. And I'm so pleased about that. Um, I just saw their residents protected, and it turns out they were well protected, okay? Um, because it's one thing to lose your home, but it's another thing when there's like thousands of lives lost. And we did not have that in Jamaica. So I'm so thankful for that. They will rebuild. And, something that I saw too was that they'll rebuild, and it'll be a slow process, but the houses will be better, okay, in some way. So I'm kind of pleased about that. All right. Jamaica's beautiful, and the people are beautiful. Um, I can't understand them when they're speaking, but they're beautiful people. Um, and they are a warm people. Okay. Let's see. Oh, one of Don the Con's golf workers, right, who maintain his golf course, he's like pretty up there. He's been there for like 12 years. He was deported by ICE. And the beauty of that situation is that ICE has been having such shaggy, just horrible, like bookkeeping, um, how they are keeping account of the people that they're deporting and arresting and stuff. And it was hard to find this guy, okay? And it was hard to locate him. But Don the Con wanted him back. They wanted him back. And so ICE had to scramble. Christy Nome had to scramble to get this guy back. They deported him to Mexico. Okay? So isn't that interesting? That's a very interesting snapback. Very interesting, if you ask me. Um, Another snapback, RFK Jr. had to completely walk back his comments about Tylenol and the claim that they cause autism in pregnant women. Um, Ken Paxton of the isn't he the lieutenant governor of Texas? He filed suit against Tylenol because of RFK Jr.'s statements, right? And of course, Tylenol, you already can guess what happened, right? So RFK Jr. now had to walk those comments completely back, his claim completely back, and basically admit, nah, that's not, we misspoke type thing. Okay? But how did you not think that that was going to happen? Did you think Tylenol was just going to accept that? One thing about this administration that I find very interesting, they are so focused on themselves and their ideas. They don't have the ability to see others, to experience empathy, compassion, the others of othership, right? And so they become so solely focused that they miss out on not only reading the room, but reading the tide, reading people, getting any type of intuitive sense on things. You know, have you noticed like they remind you of like a 10-year old in their thinking and in their logic, right? And they can never see beyond their own thoughts and ideas, right? I will never, ever, ever, ever forget the look on Palin's face when she lost with John McCain. Remember, she was John McCain's running mate. And when he came out to give his concession speech, and she had that stricken look on her face, that I can remember that to this day just as clear. And that is because she was so caught up in all the adulation she was getting from, the MAGA back then. They weren't called MAGA, but they were basically MAGA back then, right? She was so caught up in that adulation, and, she just thought that was just everything, right? And it was beyond a shock to her that they lost, okay? And when she came out on the stage with McCain, he basically gave a very gracious speech. He was upset, but he was honest, and the better person won, and this and that and this and that. She could barely say one word. She was stricken, and that is because people who concentrate solely on themselves, who don't have a care about others in the world, get drowned out and swallowed up in self. And look at her now. Like, what has she done? You know, the only basically thing that she's noted for now is there's tons of memes about her and how she speaks and how dipped she is, and if you want to make fun of someone, you kind of like call them a Sarah Palin, right? A Palin. So you know anyway. All right. All right, guys. So let's talk about depression. Okay. And this is something that I was directed to talk about, okay? Because it's kind of the pervasive mood that a lot of this country has been in ever since this administration began. But not only that, and not only because of this administration, okay, but it's something that some people have dealt with all of their lives, or a large portion of their lives, okay? Now, I have to be honest with you that although I was born under my sun sign ruler is Saturn, okay? And Saturn, as you know, can lean towards depression, okay? And things can get pretty heavy with under the influence of Saturn, but not necessarily for being depressed. It basically is a sobering type of feeling. It basically, it doesn't give you the high flighty, like our fellow Geminis, right? They're just like, and please don't attack me, Geminis. I love you guys. I really, really do. But anyway, although I was born under that influence, I also saw, believe it or not, through my time in the void, which I go into in my books, many people are saddled with depression. It is actually it can be either physical, physiological, right? Or a mental type of thing, right? Um, and those that suffer through with it from birth bring that with them, because one of the things that I tell you guys we are here to do is to bring forth as much of our spiritual understanding and knowledge, okay, into our lives as we can. However, we do it, not in a religious way, okay, but our spiritual truths, our spiritual understanding, right? Whatever we know from the spiritual aspect of things, okay? And that is one of the reasons mainly why we are here, okay, is to bring forth those things so that our outlook on life remains realistic, okay, but on a positive vein, on a more upbeat vein, okay, to use our spiritual understanding, okay, to navigate through life. And when we take life's ups and downs, and more so the downs, and we keep letting it defeat us and caving into it, right? We we have to get to learn and get to the point where we are using those spiritual truths, using that spiritual understanding to push our way through it in that vein so that it is more of a realistic outlook, a more positive outlook. Now, I don't do false hope. You guys know that I don't do no false hope, okay? But I refuse to be swallowed and drowned out by the negativity that's around. And you guys know in this world, we are bombarded with the negativity. Okay? And one of the reasons that we come to this particular aspect of out of all the worlds that we can go to, out of all the experiences we can have, we choose this one because this is the harsh was one of the harsher, more denser aspects. Okay? But that is only to come here and soften those those harsh aspects with our understanding. And our understanding could be, I can't even go into the different understandings that you may have, or you may have, or this person may have, or I may have, right? But it is to use our understanding, okay, to go through life. Now, I'm not going to say that no one should ever be depressed, because that's so not going to happen, okay? I definitely have my moments of a darkness, a depression, okay? But I rarely let it last because I always spiritualize things. I always process things through a spiritual lens, okay? I don't take the negative, the darker aspect of or view and keep dwelling on it. I refuse to do that. Do you guys, for those of you that have read my books, the one lifetime that I had as a slave cook, right? I was a lonely. I had no family. I was a lonely person. I was kind of big. Um, Weird seeing myself that way because in this life I'm very small, very short, and very small statured. But in that life, I was a big woman, not very attractive, very lonely in a sense. And I just cooked and cooked and cooked and cooked and cooked like my whole life, basically. Okay, it was a drudgery life. Okay, but I found somehow the good in it and dwelt on that. My attitude was of a positive vein. I chose the positive vein. And therefore, although I was in this sort of horrible kind of life, super poor, super duper poor, I didn't even have shoes on. I don't think I owned a pair of shoes, come to think of it. Never thought about that before, but I did see myself barefoot. But I dwelt on the positive. In other words, I made the other slaves happy with my cooking, and so I dwelt on that, and I did my cooking with like a sense of love. And so that is one of the, and remember I told you also that I was specifically shown that lifetime by my guide who really praised my attitude. But at the time when I was 17 and saw that, I didn't completely understand it until much later when I understood how I had bought that spiritual understanding into that lifetime by looking for the good aspect of my life. That was a spiritual understanding. That was a spiritual key that I unlocked. And so by doing that, I kind of was not saddled with a depressed type of mode in this life and in others. I didn't have to go through that. And so, yes, although depression can be physiological, right? It is still, it is carried through. It is carried through and it permeates your energy, your spiritual energy, until you learn how to work with it. And people can be relieved. You know, there's I saw once a psychologist said, you know, one of the best ways, if you're not suffering from severe depression, but one of the best ways to get out of a depressed state of mind is to do something for others, right? And in doing something for others, it kind of brings you out of yourself, right? And it widens your scope, right? And not only that, you kind of bring in a sense, a feel good type of energy for doing for others, helping someone else, right? It's the same type of principle that I'm trying to tell you about. It's using that spiritual qualities. So, a lot of people that have brought a depressed state of mind with them into their life must learn how to work through it. Sometimes medicine can help. You know, divine love will fill a void in many different ways. Sometimes it'll come through medicine and our train of thought. Medicine can certainly help those. Um, I know some people that, swear by ashwagandha and then it helps them work with their sadness, their depressed state of mind. You know, but anyway, divine love can fill in the void through different ways. It can have you go to a group. It can bring circumstances into your life that forces you out of yourself, out of your depressed shell. And if you start working on it yourself, it will help you. It truly will. Whether you're suffering through it all your life, okay, or whether you just find yourself in like that pocket of depression, whatever, it will help you if you try. But you've got to get that energy going. And that energy, okay, what it does, it attracts the energy of the universe to help you. Depression is an extremely serious thing, and it is very it can be extremely dampening. But remember, a lot of times, if it's brought through here into your life, it is because you have continuously chosen the negative, the negative, the negative, and you've dwelt on that. And so, what it does, it builds that cocoon around you until you're sick of it, till you're absolutely sick of it. And want to do things differently. By no means, I'm no psychologist, psychiatrist, none of the is, just no formal training, but I can tell you what I've seen. And it's as real as if a psychiatrist was going to tell you. And probably realer. Is that a word? I don't know. Um, a lot of it is bought over because of continuous dwelling in the negative, not using the spiritual understanding, the spiritual truths, the spiritual outlook. I know someone who, growing up and well into like their 30s and even part of their 40s, had a great life, lived better than me, um, fabulous dresser, looked great all the time, had this going for them, that going for them, and they were constantly focused on the negative aspects of everything. Everything. And I used to say, look, you need to stop focusing on the negative because eventually that's what's going to be all around you. And they couldn't see it and refused to see it. The negative was like a magnet to them. No matter, you could have literally given them a $1,000,000 and it just, they, well, it wasn't in 20s, so, what good is it? Like, that's the kind of attitude. Now, they're older and their life is a true misery, the complete opposite of those earlier years. the complete opposite. Now, this is when they really need to kick in with their understanding. So, anyway, I hope that helps just at least one person. Just one person. I was definitely led to talk about it. Um, and it's a very important aspect of our lives. And something that almost everyone deals with at some point. So, thanks for tuning in, guys, and appreciate it. And don't forget to give our lovely timestamp bandit a like. They do their timestamps on every one of my videos. They might not be there when they very first come out, but usually within a couple hours they're there. Let's give them a like because she puts in a lot of work in doing them. So, and I've noticed that a lot of people have commented, yeah, like these are brilliant, these are great, and they are, they really are. They She comes up with stuff I wouldn't even think of. Okay, but anyway, take care, guys. Thank you, and I will see you soon.